What happens when a routine flight check turns into a nightmare of prejudice? For two teenage prodigies on the most important trip of their lives, it meant being publicly shamed and denied their seats. They were told their first-class tickets were fraudulent. They were dismissed, ignored, and about to be removed by security. But the gate agent made one catastrophic mistake. She never asked who their father was. In the next 60 seconds, a single phone call didn't just get them a new flight. It triggered a digital apocalypse that grounded an entire airline worldwide and ignited a firestorm of karma that would burn for months to come. The air in the sprawling international terminal of JFK was a familiar symphony of chaos. The rolling thunder of suitcases on polished floors, the polyglot chatter of 1,000 different journeys, the distant, muffled announcements of destinations that sounded like promises. For 17-year-old twins, Jordan and Jaden Washington, it was the overture to the most significant performance of their lives. They weren't identical, but the harmony between them was unmistakable. Jordan, the elder by 7 minutes, had a quiet, observant intensity. His fingers, long and elegant, were currently tracing the lines on the hard-shell case of his cello, a magnificent 18th-century Testor that was his most prized possession. Jaden was the more expressive of the two, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd, a restless energy buzzing just beneath his calm demeanor. His own cello case, a modern carbon fiber design, was plastered with stickers from various music festivals. They were dressed for a 10-hour flight to Vienna, not a concert hall. Comfort was key. Jordan wore a simple black hoodie, the hood down over a plain t-shirt and grey joggers. Jaden had opted for a similar ensemble, his hoodie a deep navy blue. They looked like any other teenagers, perhaps athletes or students, an image that belied the immense talent they possessed. Inside those cases rested the instruments that were their voices, and within their minds resided a mastery of Bach-Dvorak and Shostakovich that had left conservatory judges speechless. They were on their way to the prestigious Vienna International Music Competition, a kingmaker event for young classical musicians. An invitation was an honor. Winning could set the course for an entire career. They had practiced for this moment since they were 5 years old, their mornings filled with scales, and their evenings with sonatas, a shared dedication that forged an unbreakable bond. "You nervous?" Jaden murmured, nudging his brother's shoulder. Jordan's focus broke from his cello case. He offered a small, reassuring smile. Less nervous about the competition, more nervous about Mr. Antonelli's reaction. "If there's a single scratch on this thing." He patted the case. "He trusts us with these instruments, man." That's pressure. Their father, Robert Washington, had arranged for the purchase of the historic cellos through a long-time acquaintance in the art world. He understood that to compete at the highest level, his sons needed world-class tools. He had always provided them with the best of everything, not as a crutch, but as a foundation upon which they could build their own success. Their tickets were first class. It was a non-negotiable point for their father. "You need to rest, arrive fresh, and be in the right headspace," he'd told them over dinner the night before. "Your only job is to focus on your music. I'll handle the rest." They found their gate C-34 for Global Wings Airlines Flight 88 to Vienna. The boarding area was a microcosm of society. Businessmen in crisp suits typed furiously on laptops, a young family tried to wrangle a hyperactive toddler, and students with oversized backpacks shared headphones. The twins found 2 empty seats near the window, placing their precious cello cases upright between them, their silent, formidable chaperones. The first boarding call echoed through the terminal. "We would now like to invite our first-class passengers and our Diamond Medallion members to begin boarding." Jaden nudged Jordan again. "That's us. Showtime." They grabbed their backpacks, and the handles of their cello cases, and joined the short, privileged line. There were only 4 other people ahead of them, a middle-aged couple, exuding old money, and 2 men in tailored business suits. The twins were the last in the pre-boarding group, their youthful, casual appearance a stark contrast to the others. And that's when they first saw her. Brenda Jenkins. She was the lead gate agent, a woman in her late 40s with a severe haircut and an expression that seemed permanently etched in a state of mild displeasure. She scanned the tickets of the couple ahead, with a practiced, almost bored efficiency, offering a tight corporate smile. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. and Mrs. Davenport." Then it was the twins' turn. Jordan stepped forward and handed her their passports and boarding passes. Brenda's eyes flickered from the first-class designation on the paper to the 2 black teenagers in hoodies standing before her. The corporate smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of something else, skepticism, suspicion. It was a micro-expression, gone in an instant, but the twins, acutely sensitive to atmosphere and nuance, both felt it. The temperature at the gate seemed to drop by several degrees. She didn't scan the tickets. Instead, she tapped a long, manicured nail on the paper. "First class," she asked, her tone flat not as a confirmation, but as a challenge. "Yes, ma'am," Jordan replied, his voice even and polite, just as he'd been taught. Brenda's eyes narrowed slightly. She looked past them, then back. "Are you 2 traveling with your parents?" "No, ma'am," Jaden chimed in, a hint of unease creeping into his voice. "Just us." She picked up Jordan's boarding pass and examined it under the light, as if looking for a watermark on a counterfeit bill. Jordan and Jaden Washington. Seats 2A and 2B. She looked up her gaze, lingering on their casual attire, on their faces, on the expensive cello cases. "I'm going to need to see the credit card that was used to purchase these tickets." The quiet hum of the airport seemed to fade. The casual injustice of the request hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The line for economy passengers was growing behind them, their faces a mixture of impatience and curiosity. For Jordan and Jaden Washington, the overture was over. The discordant notes of a harsh new reality were just beginning to play. A confused silence followed Brenda Jenkins's demand. Jordan and Jaden exchanged a quick, bewildered glance. They had flown dozens of times, often alone, to summer music camps and youth orchestra performances across the country. Never once had they been asked to produce the credit card used for booking. "Our father purchased the tickets," Jordan explained calmly, though a knot was tightening in his stomach. "We don't have his card with us." Brenda's lips pressed into a thin, triumphant line. It was the exact answer she seemed to expect. "I'm sorry, but airline policy states that for high-value tickets, especially last-minute or international first-class bookings, we may require verification of the payment method to prevent fraud. But these weren't booked last minute." Jaden countered, his voice a little louder than he intended. "They were booked 2 months ago. We can show you the email confirmation." He started to reach for his phone. "I don't need to see an email." Brenda snapped, her authority swelling with every passing second. She was the gatekeeper, the arbiter of their journey. "I need to see the physical card. It's for your protection and ours." The excuse was flimsy, a threadbare veil over a clear prejudice. The businessmen behind them in the economy line were starting to grumble. One of them, a portly man in a rumpled suit, called out, "Come on, lady, what's the hold-up? Some of us have connections to make." Brenda ignored him. Her focus was lasered onto the twins. She gestured to a spot beside her podium. "Please step aside. You're holding up the boarding process." Humiliation washed over Jordan. Every eye at the gate was on them. They were being treated like criminals, their hoodies and the color of their skin apparently screaming fraud, louder than their meticulously printed boarding passes. He felt his cheeks flush with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. "Ma'am, there must be a misunderstanding." Jordan insisted, his voice trembling slightly, despite his effort to keep it steady. "We are on the passenger manifest. Our names are right there. Can you please just scan the tickets?" "I will not scan tickets I have reason to believe may be fraudulent," she declared, her voice rising to project to the growing audience. "Now I've asked you politely. Step aside." At this point, a junior gate agent, a young man named Kevin, looked over with a worried expression. He whispered something to Brenda, but she waved him away with a flick of her wrist. The supervisor, a man named Paul Peterson, with a weary, non-confrontational demeanor, emerged from the jet bridge. "Brenda, is there a problem here?" he asked, his tone suggesting he'd rather be anywhere else. "I'm handling it, Paul," Brenda said, not even looking at him. She turned her full attention back to the twins. "These two young men have first-class tickets they can't verify. They're refusing to cooperate." This was a bald-faced lie. They hadn't refused anything. They simply couldn't produce something they didn't have. "That's not true." Jaden burst out, his composure finally cracking. "We're not refusing. We told you our dad bought them. We can call him right now. Everyone has a dad." "They can call Brenda," said with a derisive sneer. The cruelty was now overt, undisguised. "Until I see a valid form of payment or get confirmation from corporate security, you are not boarding this aircraft." Mr. Peterson shifted his weight nervously. He looked at the twins, then at Brenda's implacable face, then at the impatient sea of passengers. He chose the path of least resistance. "Brenda, just follow procedure. Let's not hold up the flight." He gave the twins an apologetic shrug, a silent admission of his own powerlessness or unwillingness to intervene, and retreated back toward the plane. His retreat was a green light for Brenda. She picked up the microphone, her voice amplified and cold cut through the terminal. "Attention passengers for Flight 88 to Vienna. We are experiencing a slight delay at the gate. We appreciate your patience." She placed the mic down and then turned to a nearby airport security officer. "Officer, I may need your assistance here." The officer, a large man who looked profoundly bored, ambled over. The situation had escalated from an inconvenience to a public spectacle. People were now openly staring, some filming with their phones. The twins felt a profound sense of helplessness. Their dream of Vienna, the culmination of years of work, was being dismantled piece by piece by the baseless suspicions of one woman. Jordan felt his brother trembling with rage beside him. He put a steadying hand on Jaden's arm. Panic was a luxury they couldn't afford. He thought back to his father's words. "Your only job is to focus on your music. I'll handle the rest." He had to handle this. "Okay," Jordan said, his voice now dangerously calm. "Okay. You believe our tickets are fake. You want us to step aside. We will." He guided his brother and their cellos away from the podium, standing near the large window overlooking the tarmac. The other first-class passengers had boarded, and the economy line was now shuffling forward, each person glancing at the two teenage pariahs as they passed. Jaden was breathing hard. "I can't believe this. This is insane. Are we going to miss the flight, the competition?" "Jordan, what are we going to do?" Jordan didn't answer immediately. He watched Brenda Jenkins work her face, a mask of smug satisfaction, as she scanned ticket after ticket, the problem now neatly swept to the side. She had won. She had enforced her version of the rules and successfully barred two young black men from a space she clearly felt they didn't belong in. Finally, Jordan pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking, but his purpose was clear. He looked at his brother, his eyes dark with a resolve that went far beyond his 17 years. "You asked what we're going to do," he said, his voice low and tight. "We're going to do what she suggested. We're going to call Dad." He found the contact in his favorites and pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, and then a calm, deep voice answered. "Jordan, you should be on the plane." "Is everything all right?" Jordan took a deep breath. "No, Dad. We have a problem." Robert Washington was in his office on the 58th floor of the Viridian Dynamics Tower in downtown Chicago. His view was a breathtaking panorama of the city and the vast shimmering expanse of Lake Michigan. The office itself was a masterpiece of minimalist design, glass steel and dark wood, a space that projected quiet, unshakable power. Viridian Dynamics wasn't an airline, and it didn't build planes. It built the invisible infrastructure that made the modern world run. They managed the cloud architecture logistics software and cybersecurity for a third of the Fortune 500 companies, including Global Wings Airlines. Their slogan was, "The digital bedrock of modern enterprise." When his son's name flashed on the screen, Robert felt a familiar, paternal warmth. He expected a quick call to say they had boarded safely, but the tone in Jordan's voice instantly vaporized his calm. "No, Dad. We have a problem." Robert leaned forward, his entire demeanor shifting from relaxed father to focused executive. "Explain." What kind of problem? Jordan recounted the events with a precision that made his father proud, even in the midst of his rising fury. He detailed the gate agent's initial suspicion, her demand for a credit card, the false accusation of non-cooperation, the supervisor's inaction, and the final, humiliating dismissal. As he spoke, Jaden occasionally interjected with a furious whisper, which Jordan would calmly incorporate into the narrative. "And now they're boarding the rest of the plane," Jordan concluded, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. "The agent's name is Brenda Jenkins. They're going to close the doors any minute." For a long moment, Robert Washington said nothing. The silence on the line was heavy, immense. In that silence, he wasn't just a father. He was a CEO processing a critical system failure. But this wasn't a server or a piece of code. It was his children. They had been subjected to a vile racist ordeal that he, with all his power and wealth, had not been able to shield them from. A cold, surgical rage settled over him. "Jordan," he said, finally, his voice devoid of any emotion, which was far more terrifying than if he had been shouting. "Put your phone on speaker. Hold it up so she can hear you. Dad, she won't listen. Just do it, son." Jordan nodded to Jaden. They walked back toward the boarding gate podium. Brenda Jenkins was tapping at her computer, preparing to finalize the flight manifest. The last few passengers were squeezing their bags into the jet bridge. "Excuse me, ma'am," Jordan said loudly. Brenda looked up, her face a mask of annoyance. "I told you two to wait. The flight is closed. Security will be here shortly to escort you from the gate area." "My father would like to speak with you," Jordan said, holding up the phone. Brenda let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Oh, I bet he would. I'm not interested in speaking with your father." Robert Washington's voice, amplified by the phone's speaker, cut through the air with the chilling authority of a judge passing sentence. "My name is Robert Washington." The name meant nothing to Brenda. She rolled her eyes. "Good for you, Mr. Washington. Your sons are not flying to Vienna today. End of story. You are a gate agent for Global Wings Airlines." Robert continued, his voice as calm and implacable as a glacier. "Your employer Global Wings is a premier client of my company, Viridian Dynamics. Specifically, they are a client of our Viridian Cloud Services and our Aegis logistics platform." A flicker of confusion crossed Brenda's face. The junior agent Kevin, who had overheard, suddenly went pale. He knew what Viridian Dynamics was. He recognized the name Aegis. It was the operating system for their entire global network. "Every ticket you scan," Robert's voice continued, cold and clear, Every flight plan filed every communication between your pilots and air traffic control, every single piece of data that allows Global Wings to function as an airline runs on servers and software maintained by my people. Are you beginning to understand? Brenda's smugness began to falter, replaced by a dawning sense of dread. She stared at the phone in Jordan's hand, as if it were a bomb. "I'm going to make this very simple for you," Robert said. "You have 60 seconds to apologize to my sons, personally escort them onto that aircraft, and ensure they are seated in 2A and 2B. If in 61 seconds they are not on that plane, I am going to make a second phone call. That call will be to my head of network operations, who will be instructed to initiate a service integrity protocol. He will remotely suspend Global Wings' access to their Aegis platform. Every one of your check-in kiosks worldwide will go dark. Every gate agent's computer will freeze. Your entire active flight database will become inaccessible. Your airline, for all intents and purposes, will cease to exist in the digital realm. You have 50 seconds left." The threat was so audacious, so cataclysmic, it sounded like something from a movie. Brenda stared, dumbfounded. Mr. Peterson, who had emerged to see what the renewed commotion was, had heard the last part of the threat. His face turned the color of ash. "Do it, Brenda." He hissed, his voice a panicked squeak. "Just do what he says now." But Brenda was frozen, caught between her stubborn pride and a dawning terror that she had just kicked a hornet's nest the size of a planet. She couldn't bring herself to back down, to admit she was wrong. That's not possible," she stammered. "You can't do that." 30 seconds, came Robert's voice from the phone, as inevitable as a ticking clock. People were stopping to watch again. The junior agent, Kevin, looked like he was about to vomit. Jaden, watching Brenda's face, whispered, "He's not bluffing." The reality of the situation finally crashed down on Brenda, the sheer, terrifying scale of her mistake. She had picked a fight with a god of the modern world. 15 seconds, the voice from the phone announced. Okay. She shrieked, panic finally breaking through her composure. She fumbled for the jet bridge phone. "Wait, don't close the door." "Hold the door." She looked at the twins, her face a mess of fear and fury. An apology was clearly beyond her. She just jerked her head toward the plane. "Go, just get on." But Jordan didn't move. He held the phone up. "Dad." That was not the instruction. Jordan Roberts' voice replied ice cold. The instruction was a personal apology and a personal escort. Brenda's jaw worked silently. The last dregs of her authority had evaporated. Defeated, she walked stiffly from behind the podium. She stood before the twins, unable to meet their eyes, and mumbled, "Apologize. Please. Follow me." She snatched their boarding passes and passports and marched toward the jet bridge, the twins and their cellos following behind her. Jordan kept the line open. As they stepped onto the plane, the flight attendants looking on in confusion, he spoke into the phone. "We're on, Dad." "Good. I love you, boys. Focus on your music. I'll see you in Vienna in a few days." "Love you too, Dad." Jordan hung up. He and Jaden found their plush first-class seats, stowed their instruments in the designated closet, and sank into the soft leather. They had made it. But back in Chicago, Robert Washington was not finished. He looked out his window at the sprawling city below. The apology was for his sons. The consequences were for the company that allowed it to happen. He had given his word. He picked up his desk phone and dialed his head of network operations. "Scott," he said, his voice calm and resolute. "Initiate service integrity protocol on the Global Wings account. Full suspension, effective immediately." He hung up the phone. On the other side of the glass, A Global Wings airplane, which had just pushed back from its gate at O'Hare, stopped dead on the tarmac. Robert Washington watched it, his face unreadable. He had pulled the plug. The shutdown was not a gradual dimming of the lights. It was an instantaneous, brutal severing of the digital nervous system. It was as if someone had flipped a switch on the entire Global Wings global operation. At Gate C-34, at JFK, the first sign of the apocalypse was on Brenda Jenkins's computer screen. As she tried to officially close out Flight 88, her cursor froze. A blue box bloomed in the center of her monitor with a single chilling message: Aegis platform, access denied, authentication failure, contact your system administrator. She clicked her mouse uselessly. She tapped at the keyboard. Nothing. The screen was a digital tombstone. The junior agent Kevin stared at his own identical screen, his mouth hanging open. "What's happening?" he whispered. Then all around them, a chorus of frustrated groans and panicked shouts began to rise from the other Global Wings gates. Every agent's screen had frozen with the same message. The large departure boards that hung from the ceiling listing dozens of Global Wings flights flickered once, twice, and then went blank, displaying only the airline's logo against a stark blue background. A pilot for a flight to London already on the taxiway suddenly lost his connection to the company's internal messaging system. His flight plan data vanished from his tablet. An air traffic controller trying to clear another Global Wings flight for takeoff received an error message: flight data not found. Within 5 minutes, the chaos was absolute. At airports in Los Angeles, London, Tokyo, and Sydney, the Global Wings check-in kiosks all went dark simultaneously. The mobile app crashed, showing users a perpetual loading symbol. Passengers couldn't check in print bag tags or access their boarding passes. The entire digital infrastructure that governed the movement of hundreds of thousands of people and billions of dollars in assets had vanished. The phones at the Global Wings corporate headquarters in Atlanta began to ring with a frantic, incessant shrill. The IT department was in a state of pure panic. They thought it was a cyber attack, a catastrophic ransomware event. They scrambled, running diagnostics, checking firewalls, but found nothing. There was no breach. It was as if their own system had simply decided to lock them out. Back at JFK Flight 88 was sitting on the tarmac, waiting for its turn in the takeoff queue. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, tinged with confusion. "Folks, we seem to be having a bit of a system-wide communication issue with our ground operations. We've been asked to hold our position. We'll update you as soon as we know more." In seats 2A and 2B, Jordan and Jaden were oblivious. The adrenaline from their confrontation was slowly fading, replaced by a profound weariness. They put on their noise-cancelling headphones, selected a playlist of Yo-Yo Ma, and closed their eyes, trying to transport themselves away from the hostile terminal and toward the hallowed concert halls of Vienna. But outside their peaceful bubble, the world of Global Wings was descending into hell. Gate agents were facing down furious mobs of passengers. Supervisors were shouting into phones, getting no answers. Brenda Jenkins was standing by her frozen computer, a strange, hollow look in her eyes. The impossible threat made by the voice on the phone had become a terrifying reality. She had not just provoked a powerful man, she had single-handedly brought a multinational corporation to its knees. The news broke on social media first. A passenger at LAX tweeted a photo of the blank departure boards with the caption, "Looks like Global Wings just had a total meltdown. Every screen is dead. Thousands of people stranded. Global Wings down." The hashtag began to trend within minutes. News crews catching wind of the chaos dispatched reporters to major airports. The story began to take shape, a sudden, unprecedented, and total system failure at one of the world's largest airlines. It took 47 agonizing minutes for the executive leadership at Global Wings to connect the dots. An emergency call was placed by their frantic CIO to the executive liaison at Viridian Dynamics. The liaison, a woman named Sarah, checked her system. "Yes, I see it here," she said, her voice professionally placid. "Your service contract was suspended by executive order from our CEO, Robert Washington, at 11:17 a.m. Eastern Time." The CIO was stunned into silence. Suspended? Why, on what grounds? "There must be a mistake. There's a note on the file," Sarah continued reading from her screen. "Reason for suspension: gross misconduct and discriminatory practices by Global Wings personnel against the CEO's minor children at JFK Gate C-34. The suspension is indefinite, pending a direct conversation between your CEO, Gerald Finney, and Mr. Washington." The message was relayed up the chain of command with the speed of a lit fuse. Gerald Finney, the portly, silver-haired CEO of Global Wings, felt the blood drain from his face. A gate agent dispute a single incident with 2 teenagers had caused this multi-billion-dollar catastrophe. It was inconceivable. He scrambled to get Robert Washington on the phone. His calls went to voicemail. His frantic texts went unanswered. Robert Washington was not picking up. He was letting the fire burn. He was teaching Global Wings a lesson in consequences, and the tuition was being measured in millions of dollars for every minute the system remained offline. On the tarmac, the pilot of Flight 88 made another announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been informed that due to an unprecedented network outage across our entire airline, all Global Wings flights worldwide have been grounded. We are being instructed to return to the gate. I have no further information at this time. We deeply apologize for the inconvenience." A collective groan went through the cabin. Jordan and Jaden opened their eyes, pulling off their headphones. They looked at each other, the same thought dawning on them simultaneously. This was not a coincidence. This was their father. This was what he meant by handling it. He hadn't just gotten them on the plane. He had grounded the entire airline that had wronged them. The sheer scale of his response was staggering, almost terrifying. As the plane was towed back to the gate, they looked out the window. They could see Brenda Jenkins being spoken to by 2 stern-looking individuals in suits corporate security. Her face was pale, her proud, defiant posture completely gone. She looked small, broken, and utterly ruined. The hard karma of her actions had arrived far sooner and far more devastatingly than anyone could have ever imagined. When Flight 88 reconnected to the jet bridge, the atmosphere inside and outside the plane was thick with tension. Flight attendants, their professional smiles, strained, tried to manage the flood of questions from bewildered passengers. But all eyes were drawn to the drama unfolding at the gate. Brenda Jenkins and her supervisor, Paul Peterson, were formally suspended on the spot. They were asked to hand over their airport IDs and were unceremoniously escorted away from the gate by corporate security, their walk of shame witnessed by hundreds of passengers and fellow employees. Brenda didn't say a word, her face a blank mask of shock. The career she had spent 20 years building had just imploded in the space of a single hour. Meanwhile, a harried-looking senior executive from Global Wings, dispatched from their downtown office, came rushing onto the plane. He ignored the clamoring passengers and made a beeline for seats 2A and 2B. He stopped in the aisle next to the twins, slightly out of breath. "Mr. Jordan and Mr. Jaden Washington," he asked, his voice a mixture of panic and deep reverence. Jordan and Jaden nodded, unsure of what to expect next. "On behalf of Global Wings, Airlines, and from the very bottom of my heart, I offer you our most profound and sincere apologies for the despicable treatment you received from our staff today," the executive gushed. "It was unprofessional, unacceptable, and does not reflect our values as a company." The apology was loud enough for the entire first-class cabin to hear. It was a public act of contrition, a desperate attempt at damage control. Your father, Mr. Robert Washington, has, made his displeasure known. The executive continued, sweating under the cabin lights. Our CEO, Gerald Finney, is doing everything he can to speak with him. In the meantime, we understand your journey to Vienna is of the utmost importance. While we work to resolve our technical issues, we have taken the liberty of arranging alternate transportation for you. Minutes later, the twins were escorted off the commercial aircraft and led through a series of private corridors to a different part of the airport, the exclusive terminal for private jets. Waiting for them on the tarmac was a sleek Gulfstream G650, its engines humming quietly. A different flight crew, one that exuded quiet professionalism, greeted them at the steps. "Welcome aboard, gentlemen," the pilot said with a warm smile. "We're ready to depart for Vienna whenever you are." As they settled into the opulent cabin, which was larger than their dorm room, Jaden let out a long, slow whistle. "Okay," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "This is insane. Dad didn't just ground the airline, he got us a private jet." Jordan looked out the window as the jet began to taxi, gliding past the rows of inert, useless Global Wings planes parked at their gates like giant metal statues. He saw the thousands of stranded passengers, their faces pressed against the terminal glass. A pang of guilt mixed with the surreal sense of vindication. Their personal injustice had morphed into a global event affecting countless innocent people. But then he remembered the cold, dismissive look in Brenda Jenkins's eyes, the public humiliation, the feeling of being judged and found wanting simply for existing in their own skin. His father hadn't done this just for them. He had done it because a line had been crossed that should never be crossed. The media firestorm was already raging. Global Wings Down was the #1 trend worldwide. News outlets initially reporting a technical glitch were now getting leaks from inside the airline. The story was shifting from a corporate failure to a dramatic tale of discrimination and unprecedented corporate retaliation. Headlines began to pop up. Billionaire CEO grounds, airline after sons, face alleged racial profiling. The phone call that cost Global Wings $100 million. And counting. Viridian Dynamics, CEO Robert Washington, pulls plug on airline giant. Robert Washington finally answered his phone 4 hours after the shutdown. Gerald Finney, the CEO of Global Wings, had aged 10 years in that time. The stock had already entered a freefall in after-hours trading, and the logistical nightmare of rescheduling 250,000 passengers was just beginning. "Robert, for God's sake, we need to talk," Finney pleaded, his voice hoarse. "There is nothing to talk about," Gerald Roberts' voice came back cold and measured. "You had a systemic failure in your organization. A failure of decency, a failure of training, and a failure of character. It directly impacted my family." I responded accordingly. It was 2 employees, Robert, 2 rogue employees, who have been dealt with. You can't punish the entire company for their actions. It was 1 employee who acted, and 1 supervisor who stood by and allowed it to happen, Robert corrected him. That's not a rogue element. That's a culture. You don't get to profit from my company's technology while your staff treats my children like criminals. The service will be restored when I receive 3 things. First, a public, unreserved apology to my sons, and to the public for the culture of discrimination your company clearly fosters. Second, a complete top-to-bottom review and overhaul of your employee training protocols regarding unconscious bias, to be overseen by a third-party firm of my choosing. And third, he paused, letting the weight of the final demand settle a $100 million donation to the NACP Legal Defense Fund and the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. My office will send you the wiring instructions." Finney was speechless. The demands were draconian, humiliating, and incredibly expensive, but he had no choice. Every minute the system was down, his company was bleeding cash and hemorrhaging public trust. "Consider it done, Robert," he finally choked out. "You'll have a contract on your desk within the hour," Robert said. "The moment I have a signed copy back, I will authorize the restoration of your systems." He hung up. The systems came back online 7 hours and 22 minutes after they went down. But the damage was done. Global Wings Airlines was now the poster child for corporate malpractice and racial bias. Their reputation was in tatters. The story of the Washington twins was now a global legend, a modern-day tale of David and a Goliath who happened to have a Titan for a father. And for Brenda Jenkins, the woman who had lit the match, her personal reckoning was only just beginning. The karma cascade had been triggered, and it was about to wash away every foundation of the life she knew. In the weeks that followed, the global shutdown, as the media dubbed it, the fallout settled unevenly. For Jordan and Jaden Washington, life quickly moved beyond the incident. They arrived in Vienna refreshed and focused. They performed brilliantly their shared ordeal, infusing their music with a raw, powerful, emotional depth that captivated the judges. Jaden won the bronze medal in his category, and Jordan took home the silver, an incredible achievement that secured them multiple scholarship offers from the world's top conservatories, including Juilliard. Their father's actions, while dramatic, had successfully cleared the path for their dream. They became reluctant symbols of standing up to injustice, but they did their best to recede from the spotlight and focus on their art. For Global Wings Airlines, the pain was acute and lasting. The $100 million donation was the least of their worries. Their stock price had plummeted by nearly 30%, wiping out billions in shareholder value. A class action lawsuit was filed on behalf of the stranded passengers. Their brand became toxic, a punchline in late-night monologues, and a case study in business school ethics classes on what not to do. Gerald Finney was forced to resign by the board of directors 2 months later. The company initiated a painful and expensive rebranding effort, but the stain of the incident remained. But for Brenda Jenkins, the karma was not corporate or abstract. It was personal grinding and absolute. She was, of course, fired immediately for gross misconduct and violation of company policy. Paul Peterson was also terminated for his failure to supervise and intervene. But Brenda's punishment didn't end with the loss of her job. A passenger's cell phone video of the initial confrontation had gone viral. It was shaky, and the audio was poor, but it clearly captured her dismissive tone, her sneering refusal to listen, and the twins' polite but desperate pleas. The internet did what the internet does. She was identified, doxed, and pilloried. Her face was everywhere a meme for racial profiling, nicknamed Gatekeeper Karen. She received death threats. Her address was posted online. She had to delete all her social media, unplug her phone, and live like a fugitive in her own suburban home. She discovered she was not just unemployed, she was unemployable. The airline industry is a surprisingly small world. Her name was blacklisted. No other major carrier would touch her. Even retail and customer service jobs were impossible. One hiring manager at a department store recognized her mid-interview and politely but firmly ended the meeting. Her reputation was radioactive. Her life savings began to dwindle, eaten away by her mortgage, car payments, and the simple cost of living. After 3 months of fruitless searching, she was forced to take a job as a night shift cleaner at a commercial office, building a humbling anonymous job that was a world away from the power and authority she had wielded at the airport gate. The uniform was ill-fitting, the work was grueling, and the pay was a fraction of her old salary. The deepest cut, however, came from her own family. Her daughter Chloe was a talented high school senior, a gifted artist who dreamed of attending the prestigious Rhode Island School of Design, RISD. Chloe's portfolio was exceptional, but RISD's tuition was astronomical. Their only hope was a significant scholarship. Chloe had been a finalist for the prestigious Creative Futures of America Scholarship, a full-ride award given to only 10 students in the country. It was her dream, the culmination of her own years of hard work. The final step was an in-person interview and portfolio review in New York City. Brenda, using the last of her emergency credit, booked a bus ticket and a cheap motel room for Chloe and herself. The irony was not lost on her. She, who had once held the power to deny travel to others, was now relegated to the cramped, uncomfortable world of cross-country bus rides. During the trip, Chloe was quiet, her usual artistic ebullience replaced by a somber anxiety. "Mum," she finally asked, looking out at the passing highway. "The people on the scholarship committee, do you think they'll know who you are?" The question struck Brenda like a physical blow. "No, sweetie, of course not. This is about you, your art. It has nothing to do with me." But she knew it was a lie. Her infamy clung to her like a shroud, and she feared its shadow would fall upon her daughter. The day of the interview arrived. The Foundation's office was located in a sleek, modern building in Manhattan. As they sat in the waiting area, Brenda's heart pounded in her chest. Chloe was called in first for the portfolio review. Brenda waited for what felt like an eternity, wringing her hands, praying that her daughter's talent would be enough to overcome the baggage of her mother's name. After an hour, Chloe emerged, her face pale. An administrator followed her. "Ms. Jenkins." The administrator said, her tone polite but firm. "The board would like to speak with you briefly before they make their final decision." Brenda's blood ran cold. This was not standard procedure. She stood on trembling legs and followed the administrator down a long, quiet hallway into an imposing boardroom. 3 people sat at a large mahogany table. They were the final selection committee. The man in the center, a distinguished gentleman with kind eyes and silver hair, gestured to the empty chair opposite them. "Ms. Jenkins, please have a seat. I am Mr. Davies, the director of the Foundation." Brenda sat her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Your daughter's work is extraordinary," Mr. Davies began. "She is without a doubt one of the most promising young artists we have seen this year. Her technical skill is matched only by her unique vision." A small flicker of hope ignited in Brenda's chest. "However," he continued, his tone shifting, "a small concern has been raised during our due diligence process. The Creative Futures of America Scholarship is funded by a number of philanthropic partners. Our primary benefactor has a very strict charter. The scholarships are intended to foster not only talent, but also character empathy and an understanding of the world. It came to our attention that you are Chloe's mother." He slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a news article about the Global Wings incident. Her own face stared back at her. "Our principal benefactor Storm," Mr. Davies said, his voice now laced with a quiet gravity, "believes that the values of a family are often reflected in its members. He was concerned that the attitudes displayed in this incident might not align with the spirit of the award." Brenda felt the room begin to spin. It was happening. Her past was poisoning her daughter's future. "That's not fair," she cried out, her voice cracking. "Whatever I did, that was me. It has nothing to do with Chloe. She's a good person. She's not like me." The admission hung in the air, a desperate, pathetic confession. Mr. Davies held up a hand. "We understand, and we believe in second chances, which is why our benefactor proposed a solution. He is willing to overlook this issue and award Chloe the full scholarship on one condition." Brenda leaned forward, tears welling in her eyes. "Anything. I'll do anything. He wants you to meet him," Mr. Davies said. "He's waiting in the next room. He wishes to speak with you mother to parent to understand what happened that day. If he is satisfied with your conversation, Chloe's future is secure." Relief, terrifying and overwhelming, flooded through her. It was a test of her remorse. She could do this. She had to. For Chloe. "Yes," she whispered, nodding vigorously. "Of course, I'll speak with him." Mr. Davies stood and opened a door at the side of the boardroom. "He's right through here." Brenda stood, smoothed her cheap blazer, and wiped the tears from her face. She took a deep breath and walked through the door, ready to plead for her daughter's dream. She was ready to face her final judgment. The room she entered was not another office. It was a private study lined with books and art. A large window offered a stunning view of the city skyline. Sitting in a leather armchair, his back partially to the door as he looked out the window, was a man. He was tall and well-built, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit. Brenda cleared her throat nervously. "So Mr. Davies said you wanted to see me." The man in the chair did not turn around immediately. He spoke, his voice calm, deep, and hauntingly familiar. "I did, Miss Jenkins. Please close the door." She did as she was told. The soft click of the latch echoed in the silent room. "I am the primary benefactor of the Creative Futures Scholarship," the man said, still looking out the window. "My family and I believe that investing in young talent is the most important work we can do. It's about building a better, more compassionate world than the one we have now." He finally turned his chair to face her. Brenda Jenkins's breath caught in her throat. Her heart felt as if it had been seized by an icy hand. The blood drained from her face, and the strength left her legs. She gripped the back of a nearby chair to keep from collapsing. Sitting before her, his expression, not of anger, but of a profound and weary disappointment, was Robert Washington. She stared, unable to form words. It couldn't be. The cosmic, cruel irony of it was too much to comprehend. Of all the foundations, all the scholarships in the world, her daughter's entire future had landed in the hands of the man whose children she had wronged. Yet she finally managed to whisper the word, barely audible. Me Robert confirmed his gaze, unwavering. When Chloe's name came up as a finalist, my foundation did its standard background check. When your name was flagged as her mother, I took a personal interest. I looked at her portfolio myself. Your daughter is brilliant. She has a gift. He stood and walked over to a small table, picking up a framed photograph. He turned it so she could see. It was a picture of Jordan and Jaden, smiling, holding their cellos. "These are my sons," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of the world. "They are gifted too. They have worked every single day since they were old enough to hold an instrument. That day at the airport, you didn't just see two teenagers in hoodies. You saw a threat. You saw fraud. You saw two boys who, in your mind, could not possibly belong in first class. You looked at my sons, and you judged them unworthy." Tears were now streaming down Brenda's face, hot tears of shame and terror. I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I was wrong. I was horrible. I lost everything because of it. My job. My house. I'm a cleaner now. Please don't do this to my daughter. She didn't do anything wrong. Punish me, but please don't take this away from her." Robert Washington placed the photograph back on the table. He looked at the sniveling, broken woman before him. He felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Only a deep, resonant sadness. "Do you understand now, Ms. Jenkins?" he asked softly. "Do you understand what it feels like to have your child's entire future, everything they have worked for, dangle by a thread because of someone else's prejudice? Do you understand the terror of knowing that their talent, their hard work, their very character can be rendered meaningless by a single arbitrary judgment from a person in a position of power? He walked back to his chair but did not sit. He stood over her, a figure of immense power, but his tone was that of a teacher, not a tyrant. This was never about punishing you. Your life is your own punishment. This was about one thing understanding. I wanted you to sit in this room and look me in the eye. I wanted you to see the father whose sons you humiliated. I wanted you to feel just for a moment the helplessness that my boys felt that day. He let the silence stretch, allowing his words to sink into her very core. Your daughter Chloe will receive the scholarship, he said finally. Brenda gasped a choked, disbelieving sound. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with shock. Her talent has earned it, Robert continued. She will not be punished for your ignorance. My foundation is in the business of building futures, not destroying them. But this award comes with one condition, and this condition is for you, not for her. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Every time you see her success, every time you attend one of her gallery shows or see her name in print, you will remember this conversation. You will remember that her dream was saved by the grace of the family you tried to tear down. You will be reminded for the rest of your life that compassion is a currency you did not possess, but one you received. That will be your penance. He walked to the door and opened it. Mr. Davies will see you out. Congratulations to your daughter. Brenda stumbled out of the room, completely shattered. She had come expecting a judgment of fire and brimstone, but had received something far more profound, a life sentence of mercy. A mercy that would serve as a constant burning reminder of her own failure of character. As she walked down the hall to where Chloe was waiting, anxiously she knew that Robert Washington had achieved his ultimate goal. He hadn't just grounded an airline or ruined a woman's career. He had orchestrated the hardest karma of all, forcing her to live indebted to the very humanity she had once so casually denied in others. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a powerful father's revenge. It was a story about consequences, both the brutal, swift kind and the quiet, lifelong ones. Brenda Jenkins's single act of prejudice triggered a corporate earthquake, but the true aftershock was a lesson she could never escape. She was forced to live with the knowledge that her daughter's bright future was a direct gift from the family she had so carelessly wronged. It's a chilling reminder that our actions, especially those born from bias and contempt, can boomerang in the most unexpected and life-altering ways. The world is smaller than we think, and the bill for our character always eventually comes due. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more true life dramas. Let us know in the comments, was the father's reaction justified, or did it go too far? We'd love to hear your thoughts.